I missed our turn. So you're not asking where we're going?
Oh, I thought we were lost.
But we're lost on our way to CarTech to try and buy some paddle tires.
He didn't come from Hollywood. He didn't have an agent, a publicist, or a stylist. He had grease under his fingernails, a camera, and a busted car. For over a decade, Mike Finnegan was the beating, oil-stained heart of one of the most beloved automotive shows ever made. And then, without warning, it was ripped away. No goodbye, no farewell season, no send-off. Just silence. So what really happened? And what came next? Buckle up. This one's a ride. The accidental birth of a TV legend. Here's the thing about Roadkill, it was never supposed to happen. Cast your mind back to 2012. Streaming wars weren't a thing yet. YouTube was still teenagers lip-syncing in bedrooms. And two grease-stained editors at Hot Rod magazine, Mike Finnegan and David Freiberger, decided to do something completely unremarkable. Film a road trip. The plan was simple, almost laughably so. Drive to El Paso, Texas. Find a junker car for $1,500 or less. Make it barely roadworthy. Drive it all the way back to Los Angeles. Sell it on eBay Motors before they got home. That's it. No script, no production budget, no wardrobe department, no network. Just two guys, a camera, and a car that had absolutely no business being on a freeway. They posted the video on the Hot Rod magazine YouTube channel. And then, something nobody expected happened. People lost their minds over it. Not in a "we went viral overnight" kind of way. More like a slow burn addiction. Gearheads, shade tree mechanics, guys who'd grown up with their dads in garages. They found this video, and they felt something. Because for the first time in forever, a car show wasn't pretending. Nobody was perfectly lit. Nobody had a suspiciously clean workbench. Nobody magically fixed a 40-year-old engine in 30 minutes with zero problems. Finnegan and Freiberger broke things. They got things wrong. They argued and laughed and improvised, and the camera kept rolling through all of it. Word spread fast, and then someone at Hot Rod said those magic words every creative person dreams of hearing. You guys have a show. Name it. Do it every month. Go. And just like that, from a casual road trip, a $15 budget, and two guys who genuinely could not stop talking about carburetors, Roadkill was born. The name came from the concept. These were cars that most people had written off for dead. Roadkill. Cars that were, by every rational measure, done. And Finnegan and Freiberger had made it their personal mission to disagree with every rational measure. But here's the question. Who exactly was Mike Finnegan before any of this? Where did this guy come from? Because trust me, the origin story is something else entirely. 13 seasons of glorious, beautiful chaos. Before we get to where Mike Finnegan came from, let's talk about what Roadkill actually became. Because if you didn't watch it, you genuinely need to understand what the fuss was about. Roadkill ran for 13 seasons. In a media landscape where even beloved shows get axed after 3 seasons for not hitting the right demographic numbers, Roadkill kept going, because it kept delivering. And it delivered something radical: honesty. In an era where every other car show was polished to an absurd sheen, where engines were swapped in a weekend, paint jobs dried overnight, and mechanics never once skinned a knuckle on camera, Roadkill was basically a walking, smoking, backfiring middle finger to all of that. Things broke. Transmissions died mid-highway. Engines that were supposedly fixed started leaking again 30 miles down the road. And instead of cutting away, instead of pretending it didn't happen, Finnegan and Freiberger just kept going. They pulled over, popped the hood, got under the car in a parking lot and figured it out. That became the DNA of the show. Failure wasn't the enemy. Failure was just part of the process. Some of the most legendary moments in the show's history came from the cars that absolutely should not have made it. There was the Rotsun, a horrifying, glorious Datsun 24-0Z with a Chevy V8 shoved into it. There was the Vet Cart, A Corvette stripped down to basically a skeleton and raced around a track with the two of them just hanging on for dear life. There was the Monte Carlo. They drove to Vegas on a hydraulic suspension that kept trying to lower itself into the asphalt. These weren't just stunts. These were adventures. And through all of it, Mike Finnegan was the guy who made you feel like you were in the garage with him. He had this quality, charismatic but never slick, knowledgeable but never condescending, funny without ever trying too hard. He swore at cars that deserved it. He celebrated victories that seemed small but weren't. He was, in every sense of the phrase, exactly what you saw. The show also spun off a small empire, Roadkill Garage, Roadkill's Junkyard Gold, Faster with Finnegan, which later became Faster with Newbern and Cotton when Finnegan stepped back. There was even a Roadkill magazine for a hot minute, and a full-blown annual drag racing festival called Roadkill Nights, sponsored by Dodge. From one $1,500 road trip, they had built an entire culture. So how does a man get to be this guy? What kind of childhood? What kind of obsession? What kind of winding road takes a person to the center of American car culture? It's time to go back. Way back. The boy who couldn't leave things alone. Mike Finnegan's early life. This is where Mike Finnegan's story gets really interesting, because there was no master plan. No career counselor looked at young Mike and said, "TV star? Definitely." There was just a kid in Southern California who could not stop taking things apart. Southern California in the 70s and 80s was basically ground zero for American car culture. The weather was perfect for working outside. Cruising culture was still alive. Every other driveway had something interesting under a tarp. And growing up in that environment, Finnegan absorbed it all like a sponge. He was the kind of kid who learned by doing, specifically by doing things wrong first, then doing them right. He taught himself to weld. He taught himself engine basics. He figured out fabrication the hard way, which is to say, by building stuff that didn't work, then rebuilding it until it did. He wasn't in a fancy trade school or an apprenticeship. He was in garages, at swap meets, with his hands in things they probably shouldn't have been in, learning at the pace of experience rather than curriculum. To stay close to cars, which was really the only thing that mattered, he took whatever work kept him in that world. For a stretch, he was installing car stereos. Not glamorous, not lucrative, but you were around cars all day, and if you kept your eyes open and your mouth shut, you kept learning. Eventually, that hands-on obsession found an outlet in writing. Finnegan started contributing to automotive technical magazines, Mini Trucking, Drag Boat, the kind of niche publications that serious builders actually respected. Not the glossy lifestyle stuff, the actual technical deep dives, how to build an engine, what you do when your transmission case cracks mid-run, why a particular carburetor setup keeps flooding at high altitude. Writing for those publications was a smart move because it built credibility the right way among people who could tell immediately if you were faking it. You can't fake technical knowledge in front of guys who do this every weekend. And Finnegan wasn't faking anything. He knew what he was talking about because he had done what he was talking about. That credibility got him through the door at Motor Trend, where he eventually landed as a technical staff editor at Hot Rod magazine. And it was there, in the halls of one of America's most storied automotive publications, that he met David Freiberger, and the two of them started cooking up the idea that would change both their lives. But knowing how it all started and knowing how it all grew are two very different things. Because somewhere between a YouTube video and a 167-episode run, Mike Finnegan had quietly built an empire of his own, one that would turn out to be the most important thing he ever did. And it had nothing to do with Motor Trend. Building something that couldn't be canceled. Finnegan's Garage. Here's what smart people do when they work for someone else. They build something of their own at the same time. While Roadkill was growing into a phenomenon on Motor Trend's platform, Mike Finnegan had quietly started his own YouTube channel, Finnegan's Garage. And at first glance, it might have looked like a modest side project, a place to document builds that didn't fit the Roadkill format, a way to stay connected with fans between episodes. No big deal. Except it was, because Finnegan's Garage was Mike in his purest form. No co-host, no production schedule imposed by a network, no pressure to hit a certain running time or narrative arc. Just a man in a garage, working on cars, talking to a camera. Long form, real, completely unfiltered. The projects were extraordinary. There was Blasphemy, a 1955 Chevrolet Bel Air packing a supercharged Hemi engine, named specifically because putting a Chrysler engine in a Chevy is basically sacrilege in certain circles. Finnegan didn't care. It was fast, it was loud, and it was perfect. He took Blasphemy to drag and drive events. Brutal, multi-day competitions where you race the car on the track and then drive it to the next venue. No trailer. In 2024, he put the car through the legendary Hot Rod Drag Week and pulled off a trio of 8.70-second quarter-mile runs, nearly making the top 2 in his class. That's not a guy playing at motorsport. That's a serious competitor. He also started documenting a 2018 Lexus LC500 project, stripping it to a shell at RK Racecraft in Cartersville, Georgia, building it into a tube chassis, small-tire drag monster. And a 1961 Cadillac Coupe de Ville he's been painstakingly bringing back from the dead, cutting, bending, and hand-forming new floor panels from sheet metal when he couldn't find replacements. And a 1998 GMC Sierra with 12,000 original miles that he drove home from Austin, Texas, then immediately started making lower, louder, and faster. By 2024, Finnegan's Garage had grown to a genuinely massive platform, over 800,000 followers on Instagram alone, with the YouTube channel pulling in millions of views. Brands were lining up to partner with him. B&P Manufacturing in Cadillac, Michigan, built him a custom drag-and-drive trailer for Sick Week 2025. A one-of-a-kind piece of equipment, because the relationship had grown from a single hand truck into a full product line branded under Finnegan's name. He was co-hosting the Kibbe and Finnegan Show podcast. He was attending PRI SEMA, interviewing top names in the racing world. He had become, quietly and without fanfare, one of the most influential independent voices in automotive media. And then the phone rang, or more accurately, the silence happened. Because in November 2024, something hit the automotive world like a wrecking ball. And Mike Finnegan found out the way nobody should ever find out anything, totally blindsided, with no warning at all. The day everything stopped, the Roadkill cancellation. November 18th, 2024, a Monday. Mike Finnegan did not hold a press conference. He did not appear on a talk show. He did not release a carefully worded statement through a publicist. He did what he always does. He went to his Reddit community and just told them the truth. He resurrected a 2-year-old thread on the r/Roadkill Show subreddit and typed, plainly and without drama, "I just learned that it's over." The rest of the post was brief and devastating. After finishing filming on Season 13 just weeks earlier, he had learned there would be no new episodes. Ever. Motor Trend Productions, the production company that made Roadkill and all its spin-offs, was shutting down completely. No specific reason was given to him. He didn't know who owned the Roadkill intellectual property. He didn't know who to even ask. He said he was proud of what the team accomplished. He said it seemed like the end. And that was it. The automotive internet erupted. Fans who had been watching since 2012 were gutted. Roadkill Garage was gone. Faster with Newbern and Cotton was gone. Engine Masters, Hot Rod Garage, Roadkill's Junkyard Gold, Vice Grip Garage, all of it, canceled in one fell corporate swoop. Because that's what this was. Not an artistic decision, not flagging ratings or audience fatigue. This was Warner Brothers Discovery, which had acquired Motor Trend in 2017, drowning in over $40 billion in debt after a disastrous merger and making brutal cost-cutting decisions across their entire portfolio. Motor Trend Productions was considered expendable, and so 167 episodes of Roadkill, 12 years of automotive culture, and a team of creators who had built something genuinely irreplaceable got sacrificed on the altar of a corporate balance sheet. There was no final season, no special finale, no goodbye episode where Finnegan and Freiberger got to wrap it up properly and thank the audience that had made them. The last episode they'd filmed weeks earlier would simply be the last episode, full stop. David Freiberger, to his credit, made a more public statement on Instagram, encouraging fans to watch the new episodes that were still set to air and to support all the Motor Trend shows while they could. But even his words had the weight of a eulogy. The fan reaction was raw. People weren't just sad, they were angry, because they could see clearly what the audience had known for years. Roadkill didn't die because anyone stopped loving it. It died because people with spreadsheets decided it wasn't worth keeping alive. And that's a different kind of loss. So here's the real question. When the thing you spent 12 years building gets taken from you without so much as a goodbye, what do you do next? Do you quit? Do you wait, or do you just walk back into the garage? The garage is still open. Mike Finnegan's second act. If Mike Finnegan had a crisis about any of this publicly, he kept it close to his chest. Because, from the outside, what you saw was a man who simply kept working. Within weeks of the Roadkill announcement, Finnegan was back on Finnegan's Garage, building, racing, documenting, and talking to his audience like he always had. Because here's the thing that Warner Brothers Discovery never understood. They hadn't taken his platform. They'd taken a show. And those are not the same thing. The channel kept rolling. Episode 282. Episode 293. The debut of the long-teased mystery drag and drive project car. A seriously built machine with a custom 400 cubic inch LS engine from Ace Racing Engines, targeting 6-second quarter miles at over 200 miles per hour. Episode 328, live from the 2024 PRY show in Indianapolis, where Finnegan walked the floor, did interviews, and delivered the kind of content that reminded everyone why they followed him in the first place. In early 2025, he was furiously preparing Blasphemy for Sick Week, the brutal winter drag and drive event spanning 4 tracks, 2 states, and over 800 miles in 5 days. The car had come through Hot Rod Drag Week the previous year, but the engine needed to go back to Harrell Engine and Dyno in Mooresville, North Carolina, for a deep dive after a bad misfire ended his drag week run before the finish. New blower refresh. Safety upgrades, converting the front from a solid axle setup to A-arm suspension for better control at high speeds. Joining him, the returning Joe Cole and new co-driver David Newbern. He attended SEMA 2024 in Las Vegas, showing off his modified OBS GMC Sierra, the one with the RideTech coilover conversion front and rear that he'd been working on specifically for the show floor. He visited historic drag strip locations in Georgia, paying tribute to a track that had run its last race in 2005. He explored warehouses full of rare equipment, introduced new project cars, and built floor panels by hand in a 1961 Cadillac, because that's just the kind of problem he solves on a Tuesday afternoon. The numbers have kept climbing. The sponsors have kept coming. The audience? That same audience that fell in love with a $1,500 road trip in 2012 has followed him right into the post-Roadkill era without missing a beat. Because they were never following the Motor Trend logo. They were following Mike Finnegan. And that, right there, is the most important lesson in this entire story. Build something that belongs to you, not to a network, not to a streaming platform, not to a corporation that can be bought by a bigger corporation who can be bought by an even bigger corporation. Authenticity, real, unperformed, greasy hands authenticity, is not something a balance sheet can take from you. Roadkill may be gone. But the garage door is still up. The engine is still running. And Mike Finnegan is still exactly who he always was. A kid from Southern California who never stopped taking things apart and figuring out how to put them back together better than before. And honestly, that's a story that doesn't need a network to keep going. Mike Finnegan didn't need Motor Trend to make him who he is. Motor Trend needed him to matter. And when they pulled the plug, he did what every great builder does. He looked at the wreckage, figured out what was still worth saving, and got back to work. If you've been sleeping on Finnegan's garage, now you know what you've been missing. Drop a like if this story hits you, subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, and, oh, you're going to want to be here for our next video. Let's just say another icon has a story that is way messier than anyone's talking about. See you there.